Welcome to the Pushing Beauty podcast. This is Michelle Diavella, and these are words from my soul. So if you are just joining me, I am doing this podcast sort of as an impromptu, style. When I first started Pushing Beauty, I started because I felt like I had to. I had been writing so many different ideas. I had this feeling within me of like what I was meant to be doing with my life. I knew it was something much bigger than what I was doing, and I didn't know what it was. And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure it out. And in the process of trying to figure it out, I was frozen. I was stuck for a couple of years. And so I decided just to name it and start writing. And I'm sort of doing the same thing with the podcast. The podcast was a feeling. I didn't really want to jump on the podcast bandwagon. Not that there's anything wrong with jumping on any bandwagons, but I just felt like, it's another thing to add to my to-do list. But there was just this feeling within me that was like, it's time for you to start using your voice in a different way. And so writing has been really fulfilling for me, and I express myself pretty well through writing. And I just felt like, I think I need to start speaking more. And I didn't know exactly how I was going to create it. And then I decided it's been months and months and months, and I'm doing the same thing that I've done before. And I decided, well, what if I just let it be spontaneous? So that's sort of what's happening. I don't have anything scripted. I'm not reading from a blog post that I wrote, which was an idea that I had actually. So things are just going to kind of unfold as they do. It means that it might not be as short as I usually like things to be kind of concise. I know people are busy, but I also listen to tons of podcasts while I'm like doing other things, cleaning or driving or whatever. So hopefully this will serve those of you who don't really have the time to sit down and read some articles. I figured for my second episode, I would talk a little bit about breathwork. I think I'll probably open with my story about breathwork, how breathwork came into my life, and see if anything else wants to unfold while I'm speaking. So I think I discovered breathwork maybe 4 years ago, maybe a little bit less than that. And I grind my teeth. I'm really in the process of very seriously trying to resolve this issue because it's shifting my teeth. It's starting to really affect some things in my body and is just really damaging. And unfortunately, breathwork hasn't done it for me. And I have some leads, but if you have any information, feel free to shoot me an email and let me know. hello@pushingbeauty.com, because this is a really big deal for me. But anyways, 4 years ago, I had been grinding my teeth, really badly, and I kind of pinched a nerve in my neck. And so walking was painful. I was in a lot of pain. And there was a series of synchronistic events that led me to breathwork. And I don't know how detailed I'm going to get, but I might get a little detailed. It's kind of interesting. I used to be somebody who didn't really believe in synchronicity. I just thought everything was coincidence. And I dramatically feel differently now. But this was a period of time in my life where everything so clearly was leading me to breathwork and to this work that would end up changing my life. And a lot of it is like really small little things like this. So I've been grinding my teeth really bad, was in a lot of pain. And I had been reading a book that my mom sent me. And my mom had been I grew up Catholic, and my mom had a really hard time with me and my brothers. My brothers consider themselves to be atheists. I'm very spiritual. But my mom had a really hard time for a good chunk of time there, allowing us to feel the way that we felt. And so she was sending us like tons of books, more my brothers, because at least for me, she was like, you're spiritual. So I kind of got a little bit of a pass, but she was sending me a lot of books. So the point that I'm making is that I was not very inclined to read anything she would send because I felt like she was doing it to try to get me to see things differently. But this book really interested me. It was called Dying to Be Me, and it was about a woman who had a near-death experience. if you're interested in that kind of thing, I highly recommend this book. I think she has the most profound and even medically profound near-death experience ever documented. And the title of the book ended up being so perfect for what I ended up uncovering in my life. So Dying to Be Me. I really was at a place in my life where it was sort of like that crux where everything felt like it was kind of about to explode. And I felt really uncomfortable in my body. I was feeling very emotionally shut down, and I wasn't really aware of what was happening. I wasn't super in tune with how I was feeling and what was happening. I was kind of numbed out. And so she had recommended this book, and I started reading it, and the woman had cancer, and she ended up going to India and worked with an Ayurvedic healer and I think maybe some gurus, and did a lot of spiritual work. And her cancer started to heal herself. And she was living in Hong Kong at the time, and she went back home. And when she went back home, everyone around her did not believe it. They were like very fearful. She wanted to continue doing Ayurveda and I guess just not doing, whatever Western medicine stuff she was doing. I don't know if it was chemo or whatever. And she started to get scared because everyone around her was scared. And so she ended up going back to chemo and basically almost died and was on her deathbed. But I'm not going to go into her story too much more. I'm just going to bring up that there was a whole section on Ayurveda. And I had been interested in Ayurveda, when I was like 22 in college. Didn't really ever get too interested in it, but that was like a little seed that was planted. So at the time, having these are all going to sound like weird tangents, but they come together. So I've been grinding my teeth. I'm in a lot of pain. I'm reading this book. I had also lived in Hawaii for about 8 months before I moved to LA. And when I was out there, I had met a couple of craniosacral therapists who I ended up speaking to about me grinding my teeth. And they had said they'd seen a couple of cases cured from craniosacral therapy. So that was another seed that was planted. So during this time, I'm in so much pain from the teeth grinding that I'm like, I'm going to research a craniosacral therapist in LA because I've heard that this can help me. And I was broke. And I was also very kind of controlling. And so I Google it and I found this guy. He was on the West Side. So I don't even know if he was one of the first people that came up, but his name came up. I ended up having a series of emails with him, and I went to his website first and I found out that more than just being a craniosacral therapist, he was an Ayurvedic healer. And that felt like, ooh, this feels like it's, the seed has been planted. I'm reading this book. This theme keeps coming up. This sounds really interesting. I feel like he's somebody that I need to work with. And so I was really like locked in on like, he's the person I need to work with. And so my approach was sort of like, hey, I just want one session. I want you to heal me in one session because I'm in a lot of pain and I'm really broke. So not the best approach, but really spoke to where I was at that time in my life. And he was cool. We emailed back and forth a bit. And then I think we had maybe, 7 or 8 emails. And I was really being honest with him about certain things. And then at the very end, he ended up saying, I can't work with you. And I felt devastated. I felt like I had done something wrong. So, and I kind of knew what it was. So basically he had asked me if I was available on a certain day. And I responded, I think he had said like, something like, are you available? I can take you anytime after Friday. And then I said something like, well, could you do Thursday? Because that's better for me, sort of thing. And I knew on a deep level as I was sending it that I was crossing a boundary, but I was really unaware at the time of like, I just wasn't sensitive to that. And so his response was, I actually can't help you. And I knew that he had some insight that was really important for me. And so I wrote him back and I said, can you please tell me why I feel like you know something? Can you just be honest with me and tell me? And so he wrote me this long email back, very, very, sensitive in his approach. But basically what it said was you have control issues and you have trust issues and you cross this boundary. And, that's what shows me that. And so taking some herbs and doing this work isn't really going to help you. You need some much deeper cellular work. You need deeper cellular opening. And so I suggest you try breath work. And I'm sitting here, first of all, I went into the shower immediately because I couldn't even process what he was saying. And then I just started sobbing. And as I'm crying, I realized that I hadn't cried in like 2 years. Like I was very emotionally repressed. And I'm a very emotional person. And so it was like red flags going, oh my God, you haven't cried in this long. And you're crying because he's speaking the truth. So I ended up I ended up replying and thanking him and saying I would look into breath work. But at the same time, I'm thinking, how is breath work, how is like breathing going to change my life? How is breathing going to open me up and make me less controlling and make me trusting? I really just had this idea of breath work as being, something that would be relaxing or soothing. And so I had very little faith that it was going to impact me in the way that Heath claimed it would. But there was something within me that was moving me forward. There was something within me that I felt was really important to listen to, more so than my mind. And that was the part that had guided me to trust him to begin with. So I reached out to the breathwork practitioner that he had recommended, and I clearly could not afford this person at that time in my life. And the guy had something on his site about, not turning anyone away due to finances. I reached out to him. We set up a barter. I was a graphic designer at the time, and so I was going to help him with some graphic design stuff and exchange. And I did a couple sessions with him that opened me up in a way that I really was not expecting. And I also didn't see huge transformation in the beginning. It was very impactful. It started to open me up, but I didn't realize what it was doing until a couple of months later. So I done a couple sessions with him, the breathing technique, and this ended up being what I teach. So his teacher is my teacher now, David Elliott, who's the person behind this particular breathing pattern. And he had given me David's book, and I was like, I'm not really interested in reading this, but okay, I'll read it. And so I read it. And so and it's hilarious because his book title is called The Reluctant Healer, and I was very reluctant to even read it. Had no intention myself of being a breathwork teacher by any means, or what you would call a healer. And so then this guy ended up sort of falling off. He moved out of LA, and we stopped working together, and I stopped doing breath work. And then several months later, I went through a breakup, and I remembered, that work was really powerful for me. I think that I should start doing it again. And then to continue the series of events, I was with a girlfriend who I didn't usually talk to about spiritual things. I wasn't really allowing myself to be truly authentic because I was afraid that I would be judged, or the other person wouldn't understand what I was talking about, or just wouldn't be interested, and I would be disappointed. And I decided to start taking some risks. So I just said to her, I was really into this thing, and this thing called breath work, and I think I really need it again. And she was like, oh my God, I just did that. My friend just took me into this room, and she's like, here's a box of tissues. You're going to bawl your eyes out. And this guy led us in Venice, and I was like, oh my God, send me the information. And so I went to the workshop that week and ended up setting up a similar situation as the previous teacher. So this other guy I start working with, and we do an exchange as well. And it really starts to open things up on a much deeper level. I was really ready. And so what I started to recognize in my life is that I didn't actually love myself, and breathwork started to teach me what that really meant. It started to show me all of the fears. It started to connect me to the part of myself that knows exactly what I need for myself. And during the time that I was working with this second teacher, I had somebody who was one of my best friends. I had a really toxic situation with him, and he was sort of attacking me and almost harassing me and showing me the side of him that I'd never seen before that felt really, really unhealthy, and made me realize the dynamic of our relationship had actually been unhealthy for a long time. I tried very hard to come from a place of love and really connect with him. And I just felt that his energy was attacking me, but also trying to control me. And it was at a time when I really needed to learn boundaries and needed to learn how to stand up for myself. And I remember going into this session, this breathwork session, and I was just expressing this to my teacher at the time. And he said, have you ever heard of the saying, give it up to God? And, I was open to hearing, because for me, growing up Catholic, and it didn't really resonate. And so I had rejected, anything God and things like that for a long while. But it was at a point where I was understanding it more intimately, what that really meant, that word God and spirit, and feeling that essence within me. And so it's like, okay, it's about breathing and surrendering and acknowledging that I have the wisdom within me. And so I just set the intention to release any type of control of the outcome and just surrender to the truth within me. And at the end of the session, I was super clear. I went home and wrote him an email that I didn't even feel I needed to read again. And I have read it since, I think that was 3-4 years ago now. And I ended the friendship with him and never looked back. And for me, that was a really big deal, because I've been somebody who constantly in my life would maybe feel that it was the right time to end a relationship, a friendship, and then I would do it and then feel guilty afterwards, or feel bad, feel like I should do more to work it out. Which I think is really important, to know yourself and get clear on when it's time to walk away. Because, a lot of people walk away when they need to stick it out, and then a lot of people stick it out when they need to walk away. So this was a time in my life where I really needed to set that boundary and walk away, and I have not had one regret ever. And I really attribute that to my breathwork practice, the opening and the connection to myself that it's given me. So after that, I stopped working with this teacher and just started to practice breathing on my own. I would go to, I don't know if I would go to some circles. I feel like I did, but maybe I didn't, because I didn't know anybody really who was doing circles. But then I went on David Elliott's website, and I think that there was like a training he was doing, and I must have clicked add it to cart. And I don't know why, because I was not interested in learning breathwork to teach. But I had no intention of going. And then he emailed me saying like, hey, I saw that you were thinking about doing this. Are you interested? And then I was like, okay, maybe I will do it. And so I went. And of course, I was like very, very sick. So really not. And I don't really ever get sick. So of course, I ended up being sick that weekend. So there was a lot of resistance, but I showed up and I went. And so my understanding of what it really meant to be a healer started to transform. We all are healers. We all have the capacity to heal ourselves. And that's the way that David really speaks about being a healer. Not like, I'm going to, put some spell on you or do something that's going to like heal you. I'm facilitating healing. I'm holding space for healing. And so I started to just open myself up in that way, but still had no intention of teaching breathwork. And then I think the next weekend I was living in a situation where I had a roommate at the time, and he and I were talking, and he was like, oh, what were you doing last weekend? Like, what is this whole breathwork thing that you've been doing? And he's like, I'm really interested. I was like, oh, well, I could like do a session with you if you're interested. And so, we ended up doing this impromptu breathwork session in our living room. And he was so blown away. Everybody needs to do this work. Every single person needs to experience this. This is the most incredible thing that I've ever experienced in my life, and going on and on. And I think for me, it started to hold more weight, because when you experience something for yourself that's really powerful, you're not really sure if that's going to be powerful for other people, because you're on your own journey and going through your own things. And I think that I just was focused on how it was affecting me and not really thinking or knowing that it was going to be so powerful for other people. And so he was so excited about it. I decided, okay, maybe I'll just start to share this with a couple of friends. So I sent out an email to a bunch of friends and I said, I have 10 spots open for free breathwork sessions, sign up and I'll do a session with you. And pretty much everyone was blown away and had really nothing but good things to say about the practice. And I did it with my whole family. I have a little cute story about my dad, which I guess I'll tell in this podcast. So I have a very big family. I'm the oldest of 7 children. And we're all like super close, and I was on the East Coast visiting my family, and I was like, okay, you guys, we're gonna do like a group healing session, and I'm gonna do breathwork with all of you. It was just me, my mom, my dad, and then my I think it was like my younger 4 siblings. So I have 2 brothers that are. We have a little bit of a joke that we're like the original 3 because my mom had 2 miscarriages. So, I think we're like almost 2 years apart, me and my 2 brothers each. And then there's like a 6-year gap when my mom had 2 miscarriages. And then there's the younger 4 under that. So the younger 4 were home. My 2 brothers were, living in New York and Philly, so they weren't there. And I was visiting. And so I have the younger 4 and then my mom and dad, and I lead them through a session. And my dad is really funny. He's super, he kind of, which I think that I've probably done this as well in my life and maybe gotten this from him, where he kind of adopts beliefs like, oh, mindfulness is so great and meditation is so great. I totally believe in it. But then he doesn't actually practice it. And I had done that for a good amount of time in my life. Right before I moved to Hawaii, actually, I was like, yeah, I meditate. And I didn't actually meditate until I finally committed myself to doing it. So he kind of had that approach. And so I had everybody breathing the breathing pattern, and my dad would not breathe the way that I was teaching him to breathe. And so at the end, everybody went around and was talking about their experience, and every single person in my family was blown away. And then we got to my dad, and he's like, yeah, it was relaxing. And everyone turned to him, and they're like, you didn't do it right. Like, I know you didn't do it right. And so so the next day I was like, come on, Dad, I'll do a private session with you. Just really surrender to just do the breathing pattern just the way that I'm teaching you. That's all I'm asking. And he was like, all right, I'll do it. So afterwards, he got up and he's a big jokester. So he was like, nothing happened. But then he started laughing and he was like, I am so humbled. I have never experienced anything like that before. And now he's my biggest fan. He's gone back to his ways where he totally is supportive of breathwork, but doesn't really practice it too much on his own. He's actually really into Wim Hof and cold therapy though. So he does his own thing. But it just really showed me, my sister was really young at the time. I think she might have been 12. She's 16. Yeah, like 12 or 13. And she had really amazing experiences. It was really benefiting her. And then my dad was like in his late 50s at the time. So it's just like it really benefits everybody, no matter what their belief systems are, no matter what they're going through in their lives. This is a practice that's really about moving what's stuck in us. So moving the stuck emotion, moving the limiting beliefs, releasing ourselves from the things that are really keeping us small and keeping us stuck in our lives. It helps create momentum and movement, and creative expression starts to open up. The way in which we choose to use our voice, the connection to our soul, our hearts start to open, the relationship to ourself begins to dramatically change, and then in turn, our relationship to everything around us changes. So as my life started to change, I started to recognize, holy shit, I never really loved myself before. I was really identified as being somebody who, I guess I would say loved myself. I didn't really even allow myself to go that deep into that question. I kind of assumed that, of course, I should love myself because what do I have to complain about? That's very different from actually having your heart start to energetically open. We all create unconsciously protection around our hearts because we've been hurt. And that's sort of what our defense is after we've been hurt. We're like, okay, I'm going to close down a little bit because I can't trust that this is safe. And so this work really starts to open you up to feel what it feels like to feel safe and to feel connected to yourself in a way that we don't often experience. Some people go their whole lives really without experiencing it again. You know, oftentimes when we're kids, that's when we have that access to joy and freedom and safety and spontaneity. And we lose a lot of that because of fear and because of pain and the hurt that happens during our lifetime. But using the breath, we start to shed some of that and reconnect to the part of ourself that's always safe, that's always whole. So that's a big part of how I started to get into breathwork, how breathwork affected me and changed my life. And then I realized that this is the work that I'm meant to be doing. And the reason why I was so confused before, you know, what is pushing beauty and writing all of these things about it, was because I hadn't learned the lesson that I'm here to teach. And that's really about self-love and self-acceptance. And so, you know, that's really how my work has begun to evolve. And I use breathwork as a tool continuously. I do it every day. And I facilitate it. I hold space for other people. And I'm seeing so many of my students' lives transforming through this work as well. And it's so exciting. It's so incredible to acknowledge that there is something within us, within our bodies, this mechanism of the breath that is fundamental. It's the way that we survive. And to manipulate it in the simplest way can literally transform our lives. And so that is accessible to us all the time. And it's the fastest way I know to connect to your heart, to your soul, to get clarity, to release pain. There's so many benefits. I could go on forever, and I'll probably have to do another podcast, maybe a Q&A or something around breathwork in particular. But you know, if you're interested in this practice and trying it out for yourself, it's really one of those things you have to experience to really understand it. You know, I like kind of laugh before all of my sessions because I'll tell people, you know, like your hands might get a little cramped up depending on what you're going through. And then the people whose hands cramp up, they're like freaked out because they can't believe that they're, you know, it's one of those things when you hear about it, you're like, okay, it'll be fine. But to experience it is totally different. And so I could sit here and tell you like, yeah, I like learned to love myself. If you don't experience what it feels like to love yourself, hearing about it, it just sounds, you know, sounds like, oh, that's nice. Or maybe you're thinking, you know, I'm good already. I have that down. But to feel it and to experience it is a whole other level. So if you're interested, I host some virtual workshops so you can live anywhere in the world and be at home and just tune in, which is really great for people who don't live places where there's circles. And if you live in Los Angeles, I do circles, and then I also travel a bit. And if you're interested in one-on-one sessions, sometimes the group thing, it's hard for some people to let go in groups. So private sessions can really help you get much more, allow you to go deeper, but also allow us to focus specifically on what's going on with you in particular and kind of help you get unstuck in certain areas. So that's available as well. You can head over to my website and there's tons of information on breathwork and how to do sessions with me and work with me. And then if you have questions about breathwork in general, shoot me an email. Maybe I'll compile a bunch of questions people have and do another podcast about breathwork if there's any holes that I've left in the story. But I think that's probably a good place to stop. I hope that this has sparked a little bit of interest in you in the power of your own breath and how it can really change your life. And hopefully I'll have you guys with me next time.